Good morning. My name is Henry Santana, at-large City Councilor. I am the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Today is Friday, April 12, 2024. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live-streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Files Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ps@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on an order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you are looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Cora Montrand, at cora.montrand@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on 3 grant dockets, the first of which is docket number 0342, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expand the amount of $1,705,475 in the form of a grant for the FY24 Senator Charles E. Shannon Jr. Community Safety Initiative awarded by Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund regional and multidisciplinary approaches to combat gang violence through coordinated prevention and intervention, law enforcement, prosecution, and reintegration programs. This matter was sponsored by the administration and referred to the committee on February 14, 2024. Just to give a little context, this is the largest of the grants that we'll be discussing today. As a little bit of an overview, this grant aims to reduce gun, gang, and youth violence in Boston by providing services and interventions to at-risk and gang-affiliated youth. Since 2015, the City of Boston has used a competitive RFP process, opening applications to nonprofits with a vested community interest in addressing and responding to youth violence. This process is now part of the annual funding cycle, which receives around 50 applications per year. I believe this grant currently benefits approximately 18 community nonprofits, 3 BPD programs, a Suffolk District Courts and Department of Youth Service program, and provides funding towards staff salaries and benefits, specifically a program director and data analyst. We'll hear more details on this grant today from Demon Bills, project coordinator at BPD. The second matter on today's agenda is docket number 0504, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expand the amount of $44,100 in the form of a grant for the Boston Violence Intervention Initiative, awarded by the United States Department of Justice, passed through the Boston Public Health Commission to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund BPD's ability to support the project with relevant crime data reporting, if available, assign a BPD representative to participate with CVPI planning /advisory committee. This matter was sponsored by the administration and referred to the committee on March 13, 2024. Excuse me. The second grant also seeks to reduce community violence, specifically in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, by engaging returning citizens in programming that addresses their needs and strengthens any available support they have from their family, caregivers, and the community. The grant was awarded to support BPHC's Violence Intervention and Prevention Program, which uses restorative justice and trauma-informed practices in community building efforts and activities. We'll hear today about these programs and this grant from Lieutenant Brian McManus, BPD, Mark Scott, Program Director and Trauma Response and Recovery from the Boston Public Health Commission, Tanya Mireles, Director, Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative from the Boston Public Health Commission. Our third and final grant docket today is docket number 0577, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expand the amount of $84,000 in the form of a grant for FY24 CISM grant awarded by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund access to critical incident stress management and peer support programs to address mental wellness and suicide prevention for BPD officers. This matter was sponsored by the administration and referred to the committee on March 27, 2024. As Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice, I just want to say that we know that police officers have a demanding and difficult job, and it's one that often goes with too few thanks and a job well done serving our community. The strains and stresses of working as a police officer can be damaging to mental health, which is a serious danger for both our officers and our community. We need to ensure we have programs in place to support our officers with tools to manage stress, address addiction, and prevent suicide. This grant is planned to help address these critical issues by implementing a twofold strategy. The first component will utilize an app-based training program for officers to learn the struggle well post-traumatic growth program and then train other officers. The second part of the strategy will provide training certified by the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, which cover a range of issues including suicide prevention, addressing addiction trauma, and prevention and intervention for stress. We'll hear today about these strategies and this grant from Sergeant Joseph King, Director of BPD Peer Support and Family Assistance Unit. I also like to recognize that today I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival. Councilor Aaron Murphy, at-large City Councilor, Councilor Ed Flynn, District 2 City Councilor, and Councilor Ben Weber, District 6 City Councilor. We also received the letter of absence from Councilor President Lujan, which I will now read into the record. Dear Chairman Santana, I will be unable to attend the City Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice hearing on dockets number 0342, 0504, and 0577, a hearing to discuss various public safety grants. I know the committee will conduct a comprehensive and thorough review of all the grants and awards, and these funding opportunities are vital, specifically for the stress and management and peer support programs to address the mental wellness of our BPD officers and for the Boston Public Health Commission's work on violence intervention and prevention. Furthermore, I have full confidence in my fellow committee members' ability to carry forward with the discussions and deliberations in my absence with the utmost attention and consideration. I look forward to reviewing the outcomes of the hearing and to contributing further discussions. Should you or the administration have any other questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office directly at 617-635-4376 or at rusi.lujan@boston.gov. Sincerely, Rusi Lujan, Boston City Council President. With that, I'd like to give the panelists an opportunity to provide a brief overview of each of these grants, and then I'll open up the discussion for my colleagues. We'll go in the order of the grant dockets, so will the panelists speaking on the Shannon Grant, docket number 0342, please begin.
Thank you, Councilor. Funded by the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, the Charles E. Shannon Community Safety Initiative is modeled after the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Comprehensive Gang Model. Each community receiving the Shannon funding in Massachusetts demonstrates the presence of risk factors for youth and gang violence. Shannon participants must be between the ages of 10 and 24 years old. In 2024, Shannon will support 19 city-based and local nonprofits, 63% which are led by women and 73% led by persons of color. The following organizations are receiving Shannon funding for this year: It's not a fiscal year, it's a calendar year, so it goes from January 1st to December 31st. It's a little bit different than other grants. So the organizations receiving funding are Boston Centers for Youth and Families, the GLC program, Boston Medical Center VIAP, BPD departments, which will be Community Engagement, Bureau of Field Services, and Bureau of Investigative Services, Boston Public Health Commission, EDIC to YOU Boston, Future Chefs, Fathers Uplift, High Square Task Force, JRI MLMC Strive, Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, Maverick Landing, Mission Safe, Mothers for Justice and Equality, Project Right, St. Stephen's Youth Programs, Sportsman's Tennis and Enrichment Center, the Center for Teen Empowerment, Youth Build Boston, and Youth Connect Boys and Girls Club. Shannon funds focus on the following strategies through a violence prevention lens. I'm going to list a couple of stats from 2023, but the strategies are case management, street outreach and intervention programming, community mobilization programming, education and employment programming, and positive youth development and recreation. So through this lens, the Shannon has, over the last 15 years now, supported various nonprofits in the city of Boston, as well as programs that are specifically targeting the young people who are committing violence and or targeting the families that are affected within that realm. Last year, we case management and street outreach and intervention programming serviced 1,471 clients through case management, 221 receiving street outreach services. Through community mobilization, 8,687 community members attended events, meetings and presentations. 348 community meetings and presentations were held. For education and employment, 978 individuals participated in employment programmings. That's full and part-time programming. 1,437 participated in education-based programming. That would be your after-school tutoring and those sorts of things. For positive youth development and recreation, about 1,400 participants in recreational programming. That would be sportsman's tennis and sports-based programs and the like. And then 1,712 participants in youth development programming. That would be a lot more after-school program that has a very specific thing that adds in teen empowerment, and programs like Mothers for Justice that has summer programming specifically. In 2015, again, like you said, Counselor, we introduced a competitive RFP process for the Shannon Grant, opening the grant up to nonprofits and allowed to be funded for new organizations with a vested community interest in addressing and responding to youth violence through a variety of methods. The processes are an annual part of the Shannon funding. Usually occurs in August. We apply to the state in October. So we'll start ours for the city, and then we'll apply to the state for Boston funding. Annually, we usually try to take on about 5 new organizations. Because the Shannon Grant is a reimbursable grant, it's a little bit different, and you have to be able to be fiscally sound beforehand. A lot of times we're asking people to bill like quarterly or twice a year. So it's not a grant as in here's the cash and then you can do whatever you want. I would love it for it to be that way, but that's not how the Shannon works in this manner. So we believe that the neighborhood-based program has had impact on youth violence citywide. Since 2006, the inception of the Shannon Grant, we've seen a 16% decrease in homicide, 9% decrease in aggravated assaults, and a 10% decrease in total violent crimes through an initial investment of about $350 per young person served. Again, this has been my 11th year doing it, supporting all the people that are here, specifically shouting out Boston Public Health Commission and shouting out BCYF, and our city partners that are very engaged in Shannon and rely on the funds to help the programming. We also would like to shout out in the city, there has been a lot more efforts led in funding these nonprofit organizations through different sources of funding. We always champion the city council to help find more sources for funding for our nonprofits that do a lion's share of the work to reducing violence for young people in our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And We'll now go to our, with the panelists for the CVPI grant, docket number 0504. Please proceed now. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Santana, Councilors Flynn, Murphy, and Weber. My name is Tanya Morales. I'm the Director of the Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative at the Boston Public Health Commission. So I'm going to talk about the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant, CVIPI, if that's okay, from the Boston Public Health Commission, on which BPD is a partner. And so just a little background of the grant. In fiscal year 22, the Department of Justice launched the Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, which marked a historical federal investment in community violence intervention programs. This initiative seeks to prevent and reduce violent crime in communities by supporting comprehensive, evidence-based violence intervention and prevention programs based on partnerships among community members, residents, local government agencies, victim service providers, community-based organizations, law enforcement, hospitals, researchers, and other community stakeholders. The Boston Public Health Commission was awarded the 2023 CVIPI grant, which is $2 million over the course of 3 years, excuse me, to support returning citizens and their caregivers. The grant will be led by BPHC's VIP initiative. Our key partners on the grant are the We Are Better Together Daniel Hairston Project and the Transformational Prison Project. In addition to supporting the services and programming of We Are Better Together and Transformational Prison Project, over the course of the grant, we will increase the engagement of those populations in the VIP neighborhood engagement, community building, and placemaking activities in order to support their productive reintegration into the communities and support desistance. The Boston Police Department is also a smaller partner on the grant, providing required crime data for planning and implementation, as well as grant reporting. Boston Police Department will hire an intern at about 10 hours a week to attend meetings with our planning team and later advisory team and compile and provide data needed to support the grant. So thank you for the opportunity to participate in this hearing this morning. I look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. And will the panelists for the CISM grant, docket number 0577, please proceed now? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. Thank you for the time. My name is Officer, actually checked out, Sergeant Joseph King. I'm the Director of the Peer Support and Family Assistance Units for the Police Department, of the Boston Police Department. What also falls underneath those units is the Critical Incident Stress Management Team. That team is a recognized team by the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation and the Massachusetts State Peer Support Network. The grant we're looking for is for the Critical Incident Stress Management Program. And the main target of the grant is under the terminology that's often used, which is officer wellness. For the purpose of the unit, of the peer support unit, and the family assistance units, and the critical incident teams, we go with the term officer wellness to be the physiological, mental, emotional, and spiritual health of the individual officer and of themselves. And I say that in the fact of to defeat the terminology used of the police, and recognizing the fact that the police are actual individual human beings out there working every day in the city of Boston who are chronically exposed to trauma of all sorts. Usually the first ones to respond and be at scene at multiple scenes of trauma and asked and demanded that they act in a professional and responsible manner. What we're looking to get is more fuel that we use for our team, for the technologies we use to mitigate and minimize the chronic trauma to exposure, which can end up in post-traumatic stress injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. And the ultimate goal of the unit has always been suicide prevention of the officers. The national stats are that a police officer is 3 times more likely to die by his or her own hand than that of a suspect, and that's across the country. The main tool we use is out of the Critical Incident Stress Foundation. It's through the Critical Incident Stress Management debriefings that we do. Part of that also comes with training for the personnel that do these debriefings. That training would be group crisis intervention, prevention, intervention, and postvention for suicide, and for trauma to addiction. We also do, at times, a training called Battlefield to Street, but that is tapered off as the the deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq have dropped. We have a great number of veterans that are police officers that have had multiple deployments, and that's also a target of our work. The other program we use is also called the Struggle Well First Responder Initiative. And the basis of that is more proactive than it is reactive, which has been a great program. We've had trainings in it already, have checked it out and vetted it. It's been a very good, positive reaction throughout the country. It's run by an organization called Boulder Crest, which is a nonprofit countrywide organization. And the goal with that is to teach officers that they are going to struggle, they are going to have trauma, they are going to have issues. It's how to struggle well through these issues, and how to, I like to describe it, bring up their baseline resiliency. Our officers are resilient people in the first place. Most of them, if they weren't, would have been good for about a year on the street and would resign or quit if they weren't. That's just how it works. So the idea behind these programs is to increase the resiliency of the officers, make them healthier, make them more sustainable, and make them better police officers overall that can serve with a clear state of mind, purpose, and health. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for that. I'd like to acknowledge at this time that we also have been joined by Counselor Sharon Durkin from District 8. At this time, I'd also like to turn the floor over to my colleagues in order of arrival for the first round of questions to begin our discussion. I'd like to ask my colleagues to limit the time for your initial questions and responses from our panelists to 4 minutes per counselor, including panelist responses. That way we have the opportunity to follow up on the information shared in this initial round with more interactive discussion. City Councilor at Large, Erin Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. I know we've been here before when these grants come before us, and it's great to be educated for me and to be reminded that there's so much need out there and there's so much that our city departments are doing, but we need to lean on our nonprofits or the work won't get done. So thank you to the organizations. In this handout is very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you. We're listing our city departments, like the Boston Police and BCYF. Shout out to Erica and all I know you do for our youth, and the Public Health Commission, but also, these nonprofits. The city would not be able to deliver on these quality of life issues if we didn't have these grants. So thank you to the grant writers, right? Like, we're here because there are people working really hard to make sure that we fill out these grants, that we find these grants, and that we get the services out onto the streets. I also want to thank you for just reminding us that police officers are humans, right? And that there's a lot of trauma that they go through on a daily basis. Also do our teachers and our BCYF, like all of our city workers, and I'll give a shout out to my colleague here, Councilor Durkin. I know my maiden speech a couple years ago was about making sure that we were addressing the mental health of our youth and our young adults, and hers was related to city workers. So it's something that we care about a lot on this council. But when we're adding this needed services, we don't want to be taking away from others, so we have to make sure that we're putting that money into the budget to make sure that we can deliver. No real questions directly, because it's obviously something I will happily support. Just a question, I guess. I think last year we talked about the list of nonprofits and how do they get back on a list, and what type of checklist do you do? I know they are doing wonderful things, but there's others out there that probably wish they made the list one of these years. And how long have some of these been on? Like, is there still talk about if we can't expand, like, how do we give others a chance? Not that I want to at all say that these ones shouldn't be fully funded, but yeah.
It is a annual application that comes out. We list it on BPD News as well as the city's website. So it's an open application. Again, it's any more than the current amount of nonprofits would be a seriously heavy load. About 20 is really pushing it for us. I would love to get more, but we're even from the funding from EOPS, it's pretty level. It's been about
Right.
1.6 to 1.7 every
And
year.
at some point, if you have too many, then you're not able to give enough to give
Correct.
them what they
And
need to be
the amount, I feel
successful.
that to have a successful program and to be able to do the admin for the Shannon grant, because it's not, like, again, it's not a straight up funding source. It's a reimbursable. About the average is about $40,000 for our grants, unless you're doing casework or you're city affiliated, so those organizations will receive more. We could do a lot more, but I think it would be a lot more work, and then administratively, it's very top heavy. So we do kind of rely on other sources of funding, like the youth development funds, to push our organizations who may not have received the funding, like, hey, apply for this. These are the other
other ways.
sources of fundings that are out here that may not have as much paperwork as the Shannon grant does, because it does require a lot of paperwork.
We hear that with housing and lots of things, right? A lot of paperwork, but when we're getting money from the federal government, we have to obviously fill it all out. No, thank you. Thank you for coming in every year and presenting this, and I'll obviously be in full support. And any other ways we can on the council help you expand or get other grants, please let me know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll now turn it over to District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to say thank you to the panelists for being here, for the important work that you're doing throughout the city on violence prevention, on public health challenges, supporting our police officers and their families, and so many other issues. Boston works well because of your dedication and your team's dedication to addressing these critical issues. One issue I did want to highlight, I had the opportunity to have been involved in this issue for a long period of time, is the mental health and counseling and peer services for our Boston police officers. And I'm glad you mentioned, Sergeant, officer wellness is a critical term, but a critical part of ensuring our police officers and their families get the care, services, support that they need. We had an opportunity to talk before the hearing as well, but Sergeant, I wanted to ask you, first of all, I want to say thank you to for your job of working closely with police officers and their families. And as you mentioned, a lot of police officers have been in the military and returned home, and when they're responding to a call, an incident or a difficult, challenging incident, often violent or even tragedy, that has a significant impact on people's mental health and counseling. But how are we supporting police officers and their families after a tragic event that they experience, the police officer experienced while conducting their duties as a police officer? What are we doing to help the families as well?
Right now, primarily for the unit, the best support we can give to the families without getting into family counseling, because it would overstep our mission, our boundaries, even the professional limits of our clinicians that we have working with us into an area that would almost expose the unit to collapse from the weight of the work it would take on, which is we don't do family counseling, is what I'm getting down to. The primary way we do it, and it's a statement, it's a message we send to the officers, is how we're keeping them healthy and how they can function with things at home. So one of the biggest things I have done since taking over the unit 4 years ago is, and this is when I talk to other units that are other communities that are trying to build units. Boston Police's unit's been in place since 1974. We're probably one of the oldest and most established ones in the country. We found that out at 9/11 when they responded to the pile, and the only other full-time unit there was from San Francisco. And we saw it again after the Marathon bombing, the way we were able to roll out large-scale debriefings and respond to the officers here. And so the point is, what we've realized to do is is keeping the officers in and of themselves healthy, but also I've realized that the size of the unit and what we're able, and the scope of our mission is limited to the officers. So what we've done is become, I call it a resource broker, which is I constantly repeat to my people, you need to be a resource broker. So we're constantly looking at vetting different companies or agencies or nonprofits or even just individual clinicians that are able to take on families, take on, especially during COVID, the officers were working all the time. There was a lot going on with their families being basically bullied in the internet because of the outfall from the Floyd incident, and there had officers' families being directly physically assaulted, and like, how do I deal with this? Because the problem is the officers are okay with it. The families aren't with what happens. And so the issue is trying to get families resources that can handle their specific situation. I'm not saying that the police family is any more special or less than any other family, but there's certain unique things that come with it, similar to like a firefighter or a corrections officer or even an RN that works in the ER or PMC, which is the crazy shift hours, the chronic exposure to work, being ordered to work and having to stay home. So the family dynamic changes opposed to somebody who works in a private sector job that's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So we try to find clinicians and programs that we call them culturally competent to our families. And a big thing we do is vet them out, and if they're willing to take on our officers and their families, we do that. We have great connections with McLean Hospital that we're able to make, it can make direct resources through phone calls at times if we have to for family members. Same with one of the best things has been the vet center down at Black Falcon. My first question is, are you a veteran? And they're like, yes. The vet center will do marriage counseling, they'll do family counseling, they'll do things of that nature. So the mission of the unit itself is still centered on the officer and a healthy officer, which we hope will make a healthy family. But for the families, we have a resource list that we constantly are building in grooming, in pruning at times, and to give out to the families. So it's a lot of it's networking.
Thank you, Sergeant.
You want one more question? Time is up, but you can go one more.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sergeant. I'll come back after the next round, but just wanted to acknowledge the important work your team is doing, responding, helping police officers. And you're exactly right. During the pandemic, a lot of people were working from home, but our police officers and other first responders weren't. And their families were, maybe the families were home or their spouses were home, but the police officers were in harm's way, were protecting our city, protecting our residents, and it does have a significant toll on a particular family. And the least we can do as a city is acknowledge that, but more importantly, it's important for us to support our police officers and first responders, because you've been there for the city, the residents of Boston, during good times and bad times, and you always, in my opinion, you always conduct yourselves in a professional manner. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll pass it over to District 6 City Councilor Ben Weber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, panelists, for all the services you're providing for our police officers, for returning citizens, and for youth and people in the community. I guess, Mr. Bills, I represent Jackson Square, Eggleston Square. In the 16 years I've lived in the neighborhood, there have been, kind of seems like swells of gang violence activity, I guess, and in my conversations with police officers who I represented Mamleo in some cases, and they said, well, you get kids who kind of come up and there's stuff that happens, and then we get them into programs, and they age out, and then there's a couple years later you get the next generation. But I don't know if you can just tell me a little bit more about what's going on, in my district, what you're seeing.
Well, I can tell you the program that we support in the district would be High Square Task Force. As far as the scope of violence currently, I couldn't tell you right now without going back and confirming to our data analysts, but I know there is, as in those waves, that's always one of the issues for Shannon, and then for our sister program, SSYI. It's kind of a graduation of young people. Shannon is not every person, a young person in Shannon is involved in gang. They might be affected by it because of the neighborhood that they're living in. And we make sure that we kind of keep that in our minds, because you might not be involved in gangs at all, but if you live there and those people are your brothers and those people are your sisters, it still affects you. But you don't see it within the same lens. You don't think that your brother or sister is involved in violence. You don't see them as a gang member or involved in those things. So we kind of make sure that we're addressing that as well through Shannon Funds. Just kind of normalizing the young people that are living in the neighborhood. It's not in a lot of our minds, if we're only looking through the violence lens, we're seeing it as this neighborhood is tragic. The young people are suffering all the time, but they don't see it that way. This is where they live. So we have to make sure that we're balancing that as well when we're supporting youth violence prevention. We're talking about like how we're going to support a young person who they just live there. It's not a war zone for them if they live in there. It's also their place to go. It's also the place that they shop. It's also the places that they are socializing in. So I know that's a long way around your question.
Yeah, no, I thank you for, the work, and, I look forward to, working with Hyde Square Task Force and helping people.
And then seeing what else, is there. I think we do have, we're trying to do this summer for the Shannon Grant, very small grants that are absolutely on the ground things. So we have, EOPS gave us $50,000 to do $5,000 grants that are right just in the neighborhoods, very, very localized. So we're going to be trying to lean on our partners to see what they can fund within the neighborhood that just violence prevention based, but even just more networking with young people, more opportunities for them to just be and not be parts of programming. Because a lot of times I think we are, in the last 20 years, we have really focused on young people and saying, you got to do this, be in this thing, and just not giving them a space to just be young people. There's no opening and gathering spots for them that's just non-program. So we have to think about that. We've kept our kids kind of inside and in programming. They just don't have the ability to just be outside. So I'm sorry.
No, yeah, thank you, and hopefully, when I meet with Hyde Square Task Force, we can communicate with you, talk about proposals.
Absolutely.
Okay, that'll be great. So I have a large group of elementary school students that are waiting for me. So thank you, Chair. I'm going to run out, but thank you to all the work you do. You can count on my support, for these grants. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I pass it over to District 8 City Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for convening this hearing. I love hearing more about these grants and have had the opportunity to attend a lot of grant hearings, and I think it just kind of uncovers some of the work that often goes unnoticed. So thank you so much. And hearing you talk about the interfamily life of police officers. My sister and my grandmother were both police officers, and I know what impact. My grandmother was a police officer at a time when there were no guns, so it was a very different time. She carried a stick, so but my sister was a police officer for almost 4 years in Alabama, and I can tell you what toll that took on her, and now she's in the social work field, so very much loved the work and loved that part of police work, but ended up finding a different path. But so I really appreciate all of the work that goes into everything you do and everything that the police department and our commissioner is trying to do, and happy that our police officers and our detectives are under contract now. I think that's great. So thank you for that. Regarding these dockets, I love to know the history of the dockets and sort of how long we've applied for them and whether we get them every year. So in terms of docket 0342, the Shannon Grant, how long has that been something that we've?
Since 2006.
2006, okay.
And so we have gotten it since that time, that was the inception. So we've received the funds every year since then.
Great. And what impact do you think that's had on our city's youth and youth violence?
We have seen about, since 2006, probably about 16% decrease in homicides. And that's just through the Shannon areas or the places that are the most affected by guns and youth violence. A 9% decrease in aggravated assaults, 10% decrease in total violent crimes. Like I said before, there's an investment of about $350 per young person through the funds that we get. So through that investment, we've seen this kind of long trend, downtrend of violence, downtrend of homicide, but that's nationwide as well. Like Boston we're very, very lucky that we have had this decrease in this time period. Other places have had rises in violence, but we've been pretty lucky, and I attribute it to all the programming that we're able to do, all the work that we're doing across departments and across the city.
And I've been very active, even before I was a counselor, on BCYF and youth summer jobs, and I think that program is so important. But we find that, everything kind of has to be working in synergy, so excited to hear how this docket is complementary to everything else we're doing as a city to curb youth violence. And then in terms of 0504, the Public Health Commission grant, can you tell me a little more about the CVIPI Planning Advisory Committee?
Yes, it's a 3-year grant, but it starts with it's supposed to be a 6-month planning process. We're just gearing up to start that. We just set our date actually for the first meeting. So there is a planning committee convened that includes, BPHC staff. It'll include the person from BPD who's funded through this. It includes Isaac Yablo, who is the mayor's senior advisor.
He's incredible, yeah.
Yeah. And then it'll include staff from both of our kind of key partner organizations, as well as 3 to 5 clients that they serve, because we want to have those people who are most impacted by this and who are most involved in it. We want their voices to be part of the planning process. There's a couple other VIP partners that will be part of that planning committee. We will be meeting every 2 weeks for approximately 6 months to develop, really assess, to do a broader assessment, determine what the specific needs are and what we will do to address those, and also how we will strengthen not just having these different institutions doing their project, but how are we going to create those synergies so that we're working and collaborating together to support each other's programming. After the planning process, that planning committee will be converted to an advisory committee, and as part of the planning committee, we'll determine how often that planning or the advisory will meet. I'm guessing it's going to be every couple months, maybe monthly. It just depends on what happens during the planning process. There's also, while we have our key partners, there is a small amount of funding that has been reserved to be able to fund either other trainings or other programs that kind of needs that arise during the planning process.
Thank you, Chair. And could I ask one more question? So on docket, thank you so much. That was a really helpful description. On docket 0577, as Councilor Murphy said, I've had a huge focus on mental health, particularly given my family's experience with mental health and substance abuse. I was just curious, regarding 0577, what other grants, is this being used in collaboration with any other grants for mental health care for officers, or is there, are there other applications that are out there to fund these similar initiatives?
Yes, but some of them we're using for other programs. So there's the law enforcement mental health awareness that's through the Department of Justice, the DGA, the Department of Justice Assistance Programs that have some of these classes in them. There's also another, but this grant in particular came out of the EOPS, out of the State House, and it's only in its second year, being that it's part of the post program, the post that was set up, the Peace Officer Standard Commission that was set up, and it's part of that was that each department has to have some type of officer wellness program in place. So this grant in and of itself is only in its second year, and it comes out a little tardy at times. So it's the program we have, this training that we're putting in is training that we've been using pretty regularly, I'd say, since I've been there for at least 4 years, and a lot of it's just for me is building up the numbers and getting as many officers exposed to it as possible. We're a 2,000 member department, so these classes run in, on average, at the biggest 30 officers out of whack to be effective. There's got to be a lot of interaction between the officer and the instructor for these classes to work. So a lot of this has just been a slow rollout and a repeat of some of these same programs. But like I said, these are vetted, proven programs that we keep getting positive feedback from the personnel on.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your work. I don't have any more time to yield, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll now go to our second round of questions. Counselor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Sergeant, just want to continue the conversation on support that we're offering our police officers in response to tragic and difficult calls that they're answering. When a police officer does respond to a difficult call, a tragic incident, after so many calls that officer receives in his or her career, certainly it has a significant impact on that police officer and their families. Are we capturing that data in terms of the difficult and horrific calls they're receiving? But do we capture that data so it's documented to ensure that we are providing the support for the officer and maybe their families, but it's not going unnoticed by data collection? Is it that we have a significant challenge when police officers respond to tragic situations and it is properly documented?
The documentation is a good question. Thank you. Part of the big issue that we have with the work we down there is protecting the confidentiality of the officers and the information provided. Otherwise, they wouldn't utilize us. Is
right.
The bottom line. They're under such scrutiny, and rightfully so. They're police officers. They're tasked with important jobs in society, and that carries a heavy burden. And they're under that scrutiny. We try to ensure that what they talk about, a big thing, it's kind of cliche, but we say who you see down here, what you hear down here, it stays down here, being at the unit when we do debriefings. That being said, we do have in place, and it's through the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, it's through the protocols we operate under. There is a list of certain events that if an officer is exposed or participates in this event, they are brought down, or a group of them will be brought down to be debriefed and participate in what's called a critical incident stress debriefing. It's a structured process. This isn't an ad hoc group that gets together and kicks it around how the incident went. It's a structured 7-phased process that we go through with the clinician and trained peers to properly debrief and process the event they went through. Examples of these would be their partner is killed in the line of duty, they're shot in the line of duty, an officer suicides, the dead children calls. Last year we had a rash of jumpers for whatever reason. Those are super traumatic, messy calls to respond to. Severe motor vehicle accidents with the resultant death. Example, unfortunately, being the child over just that happened the other day that responded to that. Calls like this that we know that are on our list, they're going to be brought in to be debriefed. That is chronicled. There's a roster kept. The district captain knows that they're coming down. We put it on the record that they have been debriefed, that they were down there. Last year, I think we did, I want to say about 28 critical incident debriefings. And that's usually groups of officers, 5, 6, sometimes 10 officers, depending on the incidents, between officer suicides, shootings, young children being shot. That's a big one too. You respond, you see a lot of the times a 14-year-old shot, 10-year-old shot. Well, the officers are going there and looking at someone that's the same age as their kid when they're responding to these calls. So we're capturing those. What's happened is the awareness in the districts has increased tremendously I'm going to pick on Lieutenant McManus. He's a duty supervisor at District 2 in Roxbury. Lots of times we'll get calls from people like Lieutenant McManus and say, hey, listen, heads up, we just had this call down here. It was pretty bad. Can you guys, and I'll say, send me a list of officers who need to be debriefed. So that record keeping is being kept. We are tracking who is down there, when they come down, but we are not tracking is what they say and whether how much they participated in that process. So as far as that goes, yes. It's hard quantifying to say what differences are we making in reducing PTSD or anxiety, depression, or even suicide. I know I can say for a fact that we've, I don't want to say interrupted, but we deterred some suicides already. But due to the confidential nature, it's hard to say like what we actually are doing. I do know, I feel that the impact is there because we're getting tasked more and more often. We're being asked, which before the culture will prevent it. I'm all set, that's fine, don't talk to me, I don't need to talk about it. It's part of the job, would be the attitude. The same with the fire, same with the EMS, same with the sheriffs down in South Bay and Nashua Street, same with the RNs in the EMTs in Boston Medical Center emergency room. They'll just take it in stride. Really what the issue is, it's an accumulative effect. I call it, personally, I call it emotional erosion. You know, you look at these officers and see what they looked like when they came through the police academy. Go take a look what they look like 15 years from now. You know, and it's the weight and the effect on the job. And like I said, it should affect you. If it doesn't, then you're just not a human being with a conscience. If this stuff doesn't affect you at some level, that's okay. And that's the message we're getting out to them, I think. If anything, we can quantify that message is being more accepted. They are coming in, they are accepting help. They're calling on their friends, saying, hey, this person's struggling, don't let them know I called. And we don't know, we keep it confidential. And you take those 28 debriefings in groups, you could probably multiply it by 10, the amount of one-on-one contacts we're having on a regular basis. And everything is not a crisis that they're dealing with. These people aren't broken. It's just a matter of keeping their resilience level healthy and functionable. And that's really the main mission of what we're doing down there. And I think what happens is everyone starts focusing on the fringe events of doing nothing to suicide, and there's a whole group of work that's going on in the middle that's harder to track.
Well, thank you, Sergeant. I just want to acknowledge the work you're doing, your team's doing. You mentioned the vet center. I'm familiar with the vet center down at the Black Falcon Terminal, Flint Cruise Port area. They do incredible work. I don't go there, but I do support them, and I know the critical work the vet center plays. Also, the Veterans Administration in Boston plays a key role throughout the region, supporting returning veterans, supporting military families, and supporting first responders as well. When I finished my military career, finished active duty, I had the opportunity to enroll in VA medical care, VA medical health, and it really supported me. It supported my family. And when I became a city councilor, I was saying to my wife, I was engaged in ongoing counseling with the VA, and I said to my wife, I'm not going to go through counseling anymore as a city councilor. I don't want anyone to know I'm in counseling. And my wife said, well, you know, what you're doing, continue with the counseling, continue what you're doing. You become a better city councilor, you become a better husband or a better father, but also it's an example to other veterans or other military families that it's also okay for them to engage in ongoing counseling. So nothing I'm proud of or nothing I'm embarrassed about, but if it's enabling another veteran to get into counseling, that's what I support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. You have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Well, great, and I just want really thank our panelists for being here. and thank my colleagues. I do have one quick question in regards to, our youth. I know you mentioned and talked about kind of the impacts in terms of percentages. Is that, was that data that you provided, was that like citywide data just from 2006? Or is
The
this?
data is specific for the Shannon funded area, so that'll be wherever our nonprofits are, that's kind of what we have as our catchment zone. It's usually the same areas where the nonprofits are in the city of Boston.
Great.
But that would be that area. The citywide would have been the 10% total violent crime reduction, but the 16 is definitely from the areas of Shannon.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And how do you define youth in terms of age?
10 to 24 is the Shannon catchment age. But we really, our nonprofits are probably sticking more to the 8 to 18 group is the youth, but it has been extended for the state. They kind of push all the way to the limits. So.
Awesome.
And there's also other programs that are trying to catch that older catchment of youth. So when we're talking about youth, I'm saying 24 to 30-year-olds or 24 to 28-year-olds, because that's where we'll see more of the violence happening now. It's aging up for people for homicides and for shootings. So we're trying to figure out how to do programming for that group as well, but not through Shannon, but just through other methods.
Great. No, thank you. Appreciate it. And again, thank you to our panelists for being here today. And we'll now move to public testimony. We have one incredible member here testifying, Erica. If you could please state your name, neighborhood, organization, affiliation, speak into the microphone, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning, Erica Butler, BCYF Girls Initiative. I just wanted to say publicly thank you to the Shannon Grant. They've funded us for quite a long time now, and it's been amazing to be able to do the work that we do through the Shannon Grant. Last year, we probably serviced over 2,500 girls in terms of girls' nights, events, and then the Girls Leadership Corps program that we service throughout the school year as well as in the summer. So I'm very excited for this next cycle and would love to see any of you out at any of the girls' nights or any of the youth nights. I actually expanded a little bit and, host a few events for the boys to come out to. It's important for them to also have positive experiences. And I also work a lot with Boston Police Ladies. I have them come out and do mentorship with the girls often. Currently, we'll be in a few different community centers doing some workshops and self-defense classes, as well as leadership development. So anytime you see anything about girls leadership or the Girls Initiative, please feel free to reach out to me and come out. Would love to see you. And Ed, you've definitely been to the Condon a few times for some of our girls' bingo nights. Remember? And you had to do the raffle.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry to put you out there like that, but it was good. So thank you guys so much.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for being here. With that, I want to give the opportunity for any closing remarks, if any, to you as well, Counselor. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want to give a public testimony, yep.
Apologize for being late.
No. Come on right up.
I'll blame it on the weather. Thank you, folks, for being here. I'm sorry that I missed your comments. Mainly, there was a couple of issues that I was concerned about. One of them, safety on our streets, and wherever you can pass this on, we're in big trouble in the city, and we need all the help we can get, especially police department. I know there's a paragraph in here about the police and what they need or what they are looking for. I just want to let you know how much I will give as far as my efforts to help out and whatever concerns are going on. My main thing right now, I went to a meeting not too long ago with Councilor Flynn, and they were talking about bicycle paths and stuff. We've got a serious problem in this city with cars and what they're doing to our community. Between speeding, people getting killed, and it has to be brought to the attention. We need a lot more publicity on what's going on in the city. It's an old city, it's small, and we've just gone too far with with the automobiles and how they're driving, and whatever I can do. And I'm sorry I missed your opening comments and stuff, so I might be talking a little bit off of what you guys were talking about, but I had the opportunity to get here, and I wanted to let that be put on the record. Whatever meetings we're having on safety, I just want to be here and add to it and do whatever I can to help out. We've got a lot of things to accomplish. And I'm on your side with the housing too, so.
And thank you for being here. Can you just put your name into the record? Can you just identify yourself for the record?
John Provenzano, South Boston resident, grandchildren, children, great-grandchildren. I want them all to stay. And the only way they're going to stay is we start doing some stuff for the city in regards to safety. It really is, to me, it's the #1 issue. And when we have meetings here, and they're not here, so maybe they're listening, but when we have discussions, and I realize the councilors are busy, they're all going in 18 different directions, but it's very obvious when we're talking about the police and the fire and the EMTs, what I call the heart of the city, we have councilors that deliberately walk out and do not vote on these so very important issues. And because I'm not a politician, I can say what I want as far as whoever. I understand they all have to get along or whatever, but when there's an issue to do with safety in this city, with the police and the fire, and not to vote in the affirmative of what they need, whether it's a $40,000 budget piece or an $18 million budget piece, we have to start looking at it differently the way some of our councilors are looking at the police and the people that protect us. The fire have protected me in my lifetime, the police have protected me in my lifetime, and the EMTs have protected me in my lifetime due to illnesses and stuff like that. They're very important, and I just wanted to pass that on to you. If it doesn't relate to what you were here for, I really apologize, but I wanted to be here to get it on the record. So thank you, Councilor Santana, Flynn, Cora. Appreciate it. Thank you, folks.
Thank you for being here. Again, just wanted to thank our panelists for being here today and dedicating your time answering our questions, and really want to thank my colleagues for also for being here. The hearing on docket number, any final? Okay. The hearing on docket number 0342, number 0504, and number 0577 is adjourned. Thank you.